Hello, and welcome to the Mr. Monster YouTube channel. As always, I am your host, Mr. Monster. Just a reminder that all stories told on this channel are created and or written by me, and some of them have very harsh themes that would not be suitable for young children, so viewer discretion is advised. So I hope you enjoy today's video, the second part of Window. Mrs. G rushed down the hallway and into the stairwell. She took the stairs two at a time, letting gravity control her descent, more than her own legs. Eventually, she made it outside, and to the side of her daughter. Somehow, someway, Madison was still breathing. Her inhales were labored, and her eyes were shut. Mrs. G pointed at someone in the crowd that was gathering around and said, "Call 911. The person responded, "I already did that. They're on their way." Mrs. G was staring at her daughter. She prayed to a God she didn't believe in to keep her daughter alive, to give her a second chance. When the paramedics arrived, Madison was still breathing. They loaded her onto the stretcher and put her in the ambulance. After explaining that she was the girl's mother and her daughter's emergency contact, they let Mrs. G into the ambulance and sped off to the hospital. Max woke up once more, this time on his side. His vision extremely blurry, and in front of him was what appeared to be a young woman. He tried to move but couldn't, realizing then that he was in some sort of sleep paralysis. The figure moved closer and closer until all he could see was the person's tight-fitting black hoodie that appeared to have a band logo on it. In his dreamy haze, he wasn't quite sure when the figure had disappeared or when he was able to move again, but when he eventually was able to sit up, he simply shook his head and slapped himself on the face a few more times for good measure. These dreams and hallucinations of someone being in his room were all too weird. He sat at his desk and popped open his laptop. When he went to Google, he typed in his college's name and the name Madison G. The results that appeared were not what Max was anticipating. On the screen, he saw a news headline from approximately 20 years ago that read, "Michigan student Madison G. thrown out of a window." Max considered this for a moment. Not only were his dreams showing him a reality that happened in the past, but one with very limited input, only through the lens of the mother. He clicked on the article, but it was primarily filled with information he already knew, excluding a couple things. Madison G. was in a coma in the ICU at the local hospital, and the campus police suspected foul play due to the scratch marks and signs of a struggle on her arms and legs. With tense hands and a shaky jaw, Max scrolled to another article, and eventually found one that was written only a few months later. It read, "Case of Michigan student solved after she awoke from coma." Max was in awe, not because the case was solved, but simply because Madison had survived. He held the memory in his head of what the mother had seen, the brutalized body of a depressed young woman. Hesitantly, Max clicked on the article and read. The first half of the article was just a recap of the information known prior. Madison was unable to speak when she awoke, but her right hand had contained enough dexterity to write with. The doctors had suspected the portion of her brain that contained motor control. The motor control of her mouth had been damaged by the fall. On the police's notepad, she had only written two words: Allison Marco. The article then showed a photo of Allison Marco from presumably her high school yearbook. According to the article, somehow the name had been leaked, and by the end of the day, everyone suspected Allison Marco had been the one to harm Madison. The police naturally went to investigate, but when they arrived at the first class on her itinerary, she was nowhere to be found. The police then went to Allison's dorm room. They ended up having to get the janitor to open it with the master key. When they opened the door, they saw a girl with a knife in her hand, who had slit her own throat. Later autopsy confirmed that the injury was self-inflicted. A few months down the line, after Madison had been given time to heal, she was able to accurately communicate with the police the events of what had unfolded. Madison, Allison, and a man named Joseph were working together on a group project for a journalism class. Allison had clearly been trying to make advances on Joseph, but Joseph was only interested in two things: getting a good grade for the class and asking Madison out. It went on like this for a few awkward study sessions of Allison trying to flirt with Joseph and Joseph trying to flirt with Madison. Eventually, in the middle of one of the group meetups, Allison got impatient and asked Joseph out. He rejected her, and then immediately following this, he asked Madison out. Joseph didn't even skip a beat. He even said the phrase, "Speaking of asking people out on dates, Madison," and then continued on from there. Madison was stunned at the audacity of her group partners. She looked to Allison to see her hurt eyes and her hurt expression, tears starting to form. After a moment, once her shock had worn off, Madison said, "No, I'm sorry, but you're not really—" She hesitated, looking for the right words to not out herself or make herself a target. "My type?" Allison and Joseph both slammed their laptops shut and stormed off. The last thing Madison was expecting was an angry AOL instant message. The last thing Madison was expecting was angry AOL instant messages from Allison later that evening. They were all of a similar theme. "How could you reject him? You tease, you led him on. You broke his heart. Only a whore like you could be so dumb." And so on and so forth. Eventually, as the days progressed, the messages turned threatening. "You dumb bitch, I'll fuck you up. I hope you die in your sleep. You should kill yourself. It would make mine and Joseph's lives so much better." Madison felt trapped and scared. Everyone around her assumed she wasn't going out because she missed her boyfriend Jason and was going through a depression, which was part of it. But the true reason she stopped leaving her dorm room was fear. Fear of being harmed by Allison, who Madison had suspected lived in the same dormitory building. Once her mom left to go get the sandwiches, she decided she was going to tell her the truth, the real reason she hadn't been leaving her dorm room. Only a quick moment after her mother had left, she heard a knock at her door. Assuming that it was her mother who had just forgotten something, she opened it up. An almost grave error it was to open the door. Allison was standing there in a hoodie and sunglasses. She lunged forward, stuffing a rag covered in some strong-smelling chemical over Madison's nose and mouth. Madison did not go unconscious, however. She only became delirious and was unable to properly move. Allison braced Madison's weight on her chest, knocking the desk chair backwards unintentionally, propping the door open. Allison flicked the window latch and pushed the screen out with her one free hand. She then swung Madison's leg over the window ledge with her feet dangling and pushed her from behind, sending her down towards the pavement. Max took his eyes off of his computer and looked at the door. That door. That door is where she barged in and tried to kill Madison. Knock, knock, knock. Max stood up and walked over to the door, checking the people. No one was outside. He opened the door anyway, and no one was there either. He felt like he was being watched, so he turned around, and he was alone. He was completely alone. Alright guys, that's going to do it for part 2 of Window. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like, comment, and subscribe, and share it with your friends if you'd be so kind, if they like this kind of creepy stuff. Part 3 should be coming out tomorrow, which should be the final part for this story, unless I need more time on it. But I hope you enjoyed, and as always, I am Mr. Monster, and I am out.